You need the world to know about your brand for the first time ever. And, the initial acquisition cost is scary, right? In those first couple of weeks, you're like, okay, I really need this to start going down now. When's it going to go down? And I think that for us was, as a collective function, that was what was gearing us every single day. That was getting into the data, seeing what the acquisition cost was the day before, the week before, the month before, what was working from a performance perspective, very much, in terms of that inbound funnel, what was working, creative, audiences, channels, and then also pairing that with our CEP, what was working in terms of our communications, our flows, our one-time campaigns, our growth hacks, that everything was always moving towards decreasing that acquisition cost and identifying the metrics of how we measure that. So, for example, a big thing for us is our install to subscription rate. So how are we actually converting people? Because from our perspective, our product requires you to, as a user, have almost immediate trust of our product. We're a card-linked offer technology product, which means that in order for the product to work, we ask you to enroll a credit card within 2 minutes of our onboarding journey. And that's really important for us because our product doesn't work unless you have enrolled a credit card. So that is how we identify your transactions. That is how we pay your cashback directly back onto your payment card, completely in a frictionless way. So optimizing that install to subscription rate is absolutely pivotal. And I think all of the actions that, I've chatted you through today in terms of the way that we were using Scan, the way that we use product pages, the way that we've been using influencer content, that's been a really interesting learning curve. All of it was with the shared goal of we were pinning ourselves on driving down our subscription rate. And I actually just pulled the data this morning. So since June, we've reduced our acquisition cost by 67%. Which is a fantastic testament to the collective work of every single person in this room, because we were all responsible for that. It's creative, it's performance, it's our sales team, it's the merchants that we're bringing into the product that resonate with our customers.
Get ready to deep dive into the world of digital transformation, where we explore the latest trends, innovations, and challenges shaking up industries. Join us as we decode the secrets behind successful digital strategies and hear from experts who are at the forefront of disrupting the status quo. In each episode, we'll unravel the mysteries of the digital realm and uncover the hidden opportunities that lie within. From artificial intelligence to blockchain, from automation to cybersecurity, we'll leave no digital stone unturned. But hold on tight, because this podcast isn't your average tech talk. We're injecting a hefty dose of wit and humor into every episode, making learning about digital transformation an absolute blast. So if you're ready to embrace the digital revolution with a smile on your face, tune in to the Digital Disruption Podcast and get ready to be entertained, informed, and inspired. Don't miss out on the fun. Subscribe now and join us on this wild digital journey.
Hey, hello and welcome to the Digital Disruption Podcast. Today we're pleased to have our guest, Louise Rowe. Louise is the head of marketing at Mimojo, an award-winning startup based in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. So that's all I'm going to say about Louise. I'm sure she has more to say about herself. So Louise, the mic is yours.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for having me on today. Yeah, so just to give you like a quick intro about myself, as you say, I'm Louise Rowe, also known by Lou only. Yeah, I've been in the region in UAE for it'll be 19 years this year. So I am a steadfast UAE resident, and yeah, definitely over my career, it's that local nuance of knowledge that I have about UAE, which has been a key part, I think, of what's kind of marked my career. I have worked at all different types of companies, and so I'm not a specialist in terms of a segment. I've worked in media, I've worked in loyalty and rewards before, I've worked for airlines, and before I joined Mimojo, I worked in alcohol. I was working at African and Eastern, managing some beer brands. But yeah, I joined Memojo in February of last year. We did our big first go-to-market campaign in June. And yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to talking to you about today.
Yeah, I mean,
Awesome.
okay. So thank you so much, Louise, for this amazing intro. I would like to touch upon something that when I was doing some research about you, I found, which was the recent award for best use of data and best use of PPC, which I feel like would tell us more about you and like what you do in the marketing and how do you approach stuff. So would you like to tell us more about it?
Yeah, so thank you so much. Yeah, it was a really exciting night for us. So with in partnership with our performance marketing agency, Tidal Digital, they entered us in to the MENA Search Awards, and yeah, we were absolutely delighted to win two of three of the categories that we were nominated in. And so yeah, as you say, we won best use of data and best use of PPC within the finance sector. And I think what really kind of underpins the us winning those is the journey that we have been on. Specifically with the support of e-CENS. So I think very, very early on in when we were setting up what our marketing ecosystem looked like. So in terms of everything from the MarTech stack into our internal resourcing and the structure of the team internally, but also to our agency selection. And we had to make sure that when we switched on that big spend in June of 2024, that we knew that how to track our spend effectively and that we were going to be able to learn really, really quickly. So before we kind of looked into activating any paid marketing spend, it was really important to make sure that those key tools with our MMP and our CP, that they were all singing from the same song sheet, that we had them set up basis best practice. Now, I think as a startup, what you have to establish really, really quickly is, do you have the expertise in-house to make sure that those tools are set up effectively? Because if you get that bit wrong, then when you do start spending money, you could find yourself in a very, very messy situation with a very, very cross CFO. So that was when we looked to outsource some consultation support from e-CENS to kind of evaluate what our basic setup had been, specifically on MMP, which is Adjust, and our CEP platform, which is MoEngage. And that process was really fantastic. From leaning into the expertise that an agency brings immediately, as opposed to, going through and finding expensive internal headcount, etc. So we had, it was a really, really quick result in terms of that consultation, the advice, the support in terms of making the changes that we needed to make sure that everything from the integration to the way that the events were structured within the system was all working perfectly. And I think without that, the awards that we won would never have happened. So when we talk about the reason that we won best use of data, a lot of that was the way that between our internal team and Tidal, our performance marketing team, is we really lent in to the insights that Adjust were serving us. And I think from, when we look at Adjust and attribution and the challenges that marketeers have faced over the past couple of years with the introduction, the challenges that we have with ATT for iOS users, it's really easy for marketing teams to favor Android users. It's really easy to say, because I know who they are and I spent X and I got Y, and they make your acquisition costs look way prettier. It's really easy to favor Android users. But certainly for our perspective, what we generally see is that iOS users are a more valuable user. So it's really important for us to be able to lean into whatever insight we are able to get to be able to inform our paid marketing strategy better. And so, for within Adjust, there's a lot of information. When you're hitting those install thresholds that Apple dictates with scan metrics. Once that data is available, what can you do with that? And that's where, between our internal team and Tidal, we look to make some assumptions about the correlation between the scan metrics and what we were seeing from subscriptions, which is our kind of key metric that we look to activate through our performance marketing strategy. And that was why we won that award. Was we weren't just using Adjust to be able to quickly evaluate our which channels were doing the best attribution, because it was always going to say that Android was was driving the lead in terms of our subscriptions. We had to challenge ourselves to make sure that we were leaning into all of the insights that Adjust brought us. And then when we talk about best use of search, so I think what we've, again, as a startup, we really challenge ourselves to make sure that we look into every single opportunity that every single platform brings us. So something that was quoted within the judges' thoughts was our use of Apple product pages. So Apple has a complimentary service in terms of optimizing your install rate and testing different types of creative executions within your product page. And that's been really interesting for us, particularly with our brand. So Mimojo is a cashback rewards app where we have lots of different merchant partners. And a strategy that we tested was actually kind of getting into the minutiae of the category. So serving someone from a category perspective who we believe had shown an interest in our food and beverage category, showing them a product page that literally sang to our F&B merchants, as opposed to maybe an online customer who came into the product with an interest in e-commerce, who are our e-commerce merchants that might resonate with that audience. So yeah, that's a bit of a long-winded answer. But yeah, I definitely think it is the building blocks that we put in at the beginning to make sure that those tools were working effectively. But second piece was making sure that you're not just using the basics of the tools, that you're challenging your team to really extract the value out of those tools.
Definitely. I mean, what you've said now leads me to a lot of questions, to be honest. Like, you said some interesting takes, which like the iOS users are more valuable than Android, which I've heard before, like, because iOS and like iPhone users are usually more premium or accustomed to paying more than Android. I mean, I run Android myself, but I'm not into the the whole iOS ecosystem. But I do understand the philosophy behind why you wanna not leave a big chunk of the market just untapped because you cannot get data, and relying on some external partners like e-CENS, which we're more than happy to help, to make sure that your data is like it's sifted, is right. You can use this data, and this landing you an award. That's very much amazing. And some people are hard-headed about hiring people in-house. Some people are more open to having some help from external partners, and it's all like this, like it's all marketing philosophy. So what I want to ask is, what were the most pivotal moments that you think have shaped your marketing philosophy and how you want to approach certain challenges and achieve business goals that you find yourself into?
Yeah, great question. I think, in terms of what's shaped me as a marketeer, there's a couple of instances which definitely kind of, when I think about who I am, I'm like, oh, that's where I made that decision of the way that I was going to take my career. So I remember in one of my very, very first interviews for a marketing manager role, the interviewer asked me, "Are you a brand marketeer or are you a sales marketeer?" And that was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's really interesting. Like, am I someone who leans into building a brand, or am I someone who looks to manipulate a brand for commercial gain? And I think, I was fortunate at the beginning of my career to work under two marketing directors that sat in each of those buckets. And I was like, without wanting to, win brownie points at the time, I was like, I kind of think I sit in the middle because I'd been exposed to those two different types of leadership in the right order. So I'd had a leader that was passionate about building a brand first, and then I'd had a leader who was passionate about just making money. What are we doing as a marketing function to make money? And I think it's really important that for marketing leaders to make sure that they're mindful of the balance, particularly in startups. If you're part of like a huge international business, you have specialists at a leadership function. But in smaller businesses, we have to be more mindful. There's no point in building a brand if it's not making money. And I definitely am a brand passionate marketeer. You can't make money if you don't have a brand. So that definitely would be number one. I think number two would be COVID. When I was during the time of COVID, I was working for African and Eastern, which is an alcohol distribution company. I was looking after globally renowned brands like Peroni Nastro Azzurro, Guinness, Asahi Superdry. And our business was selling our products into bars and restaurants as our primary objective. So, when the world closes and nobody's going to a bar and restaurant, you are in a total mess in terms of, stock on hand. We had a perishable product. And of course, when the business isn't making any money, that's when your marketing expend just gets ripped from under your feet, quite rightly. So that was an amazing process for me, actually. It was, what does marketing look like when you take away the bells and whistles? And it goes back to basics, right? It's back to your 4Ps. It's back to your basic product mix, product, price, place, promotion, which is all manageable with no marketing money. And I think that for me was really, particularly coming into a startup, articulating what those pillars are is really important to create the foundations of any brand. So yeah, I think that those two moments are definitely really key. And I think overall, over my career, which is where I'm seeing it kind of benefit me now, is I actively chose not to specialize. So, within our field of marketing, you can get performance marketers, brand specialists, loyalty specialists. I've actively chosen not to specialize and be generalist. And I think that's what's really helped me coming into a startup, is to not be an expert in execution, but be a generalist and know how to pull together and set up a marketing ecosystem. So identifying what my weaknesses are and making sure that I have internal resource to support that specific vertical. And then knowing also where to lean into agency support. So where it's the right moment to pull in a third party support for something like MarTech setup, for our performance marketing, for social media support. When is it the right time to do internal resource over external? So yeah, those are they're definitely the things that have been pulled together to make me who I am as a marketing leader today.
I mean, that's very interesting. I like first question that comes to mind with a marketing manager as generalist as you are.
Mhm.
how do you find how do you identify the weaknesses and then hire the right people to be able to support you with the things that you definitely like not into as much, or feel like you think some internal resources might be better or even external resources might be better? So like,
Yeah.
how do you go about this process?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of starting a new business. I think that um, you have to have a degree of you've got to be humble and you've also got to be a bit vulnerable. And there's a lot of discovery that you need to do around your peer set, right? So when I joined the business, I spent time with to make sure that I wasn't becoming siloed in my marketing idea of what I thought the business needed. It was about talking to everyone in the business, our chief product officer, our chief tech officer, our chief finance officer, our merchant acquisition team, our CEO, and pooling what everyone felt the business needed. Um, and where I felt that I had a knowledge gap, lean out for help. Certainly, my experience kind of lent towards more of the brand and distribution part of what the success of our business is all about. And a weakness of mine was the digital execution. But I'm a very fast learner and I have absolutely no qualms in asking for help. So that was where our chief product officer and our chief technology officer were fantastic and really took me under their wing. And marketing is not always a science. Marketing is about a gut feel, and that's why marketers have jobs. As everyone keeps talking about the evolution of AI, there's AI is always going to be missing that element of human connection, which is where marketers bring their value. And I think from my perspective, it was about identifying the needs of the business and knowing where I wasn't able to bring that, and making sure that I was hiring people that brought that not only the knowledge but also the attitude. I think that was a big thing for hiring for me as well, was hiring from startups. So all of my new recruits. Since I've joined, I've hired a performance marketing manager. I've hired a lifecycle marketing specialist and a partnership marketing specialist, and they've all come from startups. Because I think that that's really important as well, to make sure that you have the attitude towards the approach balanced with the skill set. It's really important to get that combination of both.
Wow, that's super interesting. Well, my next question would be all about data. So we're
Mm-hmm.
going back to the to the award that you won when it comes to data, and I want to ask, like, with multiple tools on hand, like you mentioned Adjust, you mentioned More Engage, and you mentioned like all of them having to like be referenced from the like one sheet or like
Mm-hmm.
one a single source of truth, as some
Yeah.
might say. I'm not sure what you think about this terminology. Some people like it, some people hate it. But from your, like, as a generalist, as you are, you're dealing with a lot of tools, with a lot of teams, with a lot
Mm-hmm.
of data, and you've won an award for it. So you're you're very qualified to talk about how do you orchestrate such big amounts of data into like guiding you to do or like to execute on the right like tracks and do the right like take the right decisions, because I feel like some people really miss the mark when it comes to data. They feel like they're drowning in data and it doesn't really help them. It ends up paralyzing them. Like, we have a
Completely.
lot of data, but what should I do with it? I'm not sure. So you've won an award for it. You're a generalist, so this ties up to like your strengths and what you do best. It's not being fixated on a single perspective, so not just marketing, sorry, not just performance, not just brand, not just content. You're all like you're all encompassing of the whole marketing ecosystem. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to know, how do you like orchestrate such like massive effort of like gathering data and making sure that in like CEO meetings or like in higher ups meeting, you're presenting data that backs you up.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think you've articulated it perfectly. It's completely overwhelming. You can easily get overwhelmed and get yourself into rabbit holes. And that is so easy to do. I literally found myself yesterday asking my team to perform a data query, and then I actually stopped myself. I was like, sorry, wait a minute. I'm sending us down a rabbit hole. I'm pulling ourselves out. Let's move on, because that is so easy to do. It's so easy to look at a tiny little data insight you see and you want to mine it. But it's always important to take a step back. And that comes down to clarity, business clarity. What is the objective of the business? And what is our collective single goal? So for us, when we talk about the awards that we won, those activities that we executed had one single goal, which was driving down our acquisition cost. So, as a startup, when you are launching your brand for the first time, you're pumping cash, right? You need the world to know about your brand for the first time ever. And the initial acquisition cost is scary, right? In those first couple of weeks, you're like, okay, I really need this to start going down now. When's it going to go down? And I think that for us was, as a collective function, that was what was gearing us every single day. That was getting into the data, seeing what the acquisition cost was the day before, the week before, the month before, what was working from a performance perspective, very much, in terms of that inbound funnel, what was working, creative, audiences, channels, and then also pairing that with our CEP, what was working in terms of our communications, our flows, our one-time campaigns, our growth hacks, that everything was always moving towards decreasing that acquisition cost and identifying the metrics of how we measure that. So, for example, a big thing for us is our install to subscription rate. So how are we actually converting people? Because from our perspective, our product requires you to, as a user, have almost immediate trust of our product. We're a card-linked offer technology product, which means that in order for the product to work, we ask you to enroll a credit card within 2 minutes of our onboarding journey. And that's really important for us because our product doesn't work unless you have enrolled a credit card. So that is how we identify your transactions. That is how we pay your cashback directly back onto your payment card, completely in a frictionless way. So optimizing that install to subscription rate is absolutely pivotal. And I think all of the actions that, I've chatted you through today in terms of the way that we were using Scan, the way that we use product pages, the way that we've been using influencer content, that's been a really interesting learning curve. All of it was with the shared goal of we were pinning ourselves on driving down our subscription rate. And I actually just pulled the data this morning. So since June, we've reduced our acquisition cost by 67%.
Wow.
Which is a fantastic testament to the collective work of every single person in this room, because we were all responsible for that. It's creative, it's performance, it's our sales team, it's the merchants that we're bringing into the product that resonate with our customers. I think in terms of making sure that you use data to be effective, it's really important to have clarity on what the goal is, because otherwise you can find yourself looking for insight for the sake of it, or looking for insight because it interests you. I think that's another thing, which is, really easy to do, is to take an insight and go, I think this is really interesting, so let's do this. But when you're working cross-functionally with many other teams, you also then have to think about, well, I need to be able to explain to the business why I'm doing this, why I'm asking product to make a change, why I'm asking tech to put something into the next sprint. So again, just clarity on exactly what we're going after, I think, is really important.
That's very, I mean, congratulations on like dropping the acquisition rate by this much.
Thank
That's
you.
like that's very amazing. Um, I was gonna ask a question, but I think like you've answered it within within your within this talk that you gave, which I was gonna ask, how do you cultivate such a team that helps you drive acquisition and retention? But I think you've gave me the answer. It's having a clear vision and then having the right executioners in place to do exactly what you need them to do. So I feel like this this is missing from a lot of companies, and I've worked in a lot of startups. I have never been in a corporation before, so I've been in a couple of startups and new companies. I think e-CENS is my first agency to work in, and I feel like a lot of people are missing that. We want sales, but how do you reach the sales, or how do you reach the customer acquisition, or how do you reach the retention? It's figure it out.
Yeah. And I think it's also about celebrating the small wins, right? I think, we didn't slash our customer acquisition rate by 50% in 1 month. That's not feed. I mean, for some brands, maybe that is feasible. But for us, with the brand and budgets that we were operating on, a big thing about our product, as I mentioned, is building trust, and that takes
Mm.
time. That's not something that you can switch on overnight, and we've definitely looked at ways that we can look to escalate that through partnerships, for example. But I think for me, it's very much making sure that you keep your team motivated with celebrating the small wins. We increased our in-total subscription rate by 0.5% from this that we did. Amazing, great, because if we continue to do that, we're going to get way more, long-term results out of a team rather than only celebrating when something massive happens. So I think celebrating the small wins is really important as well.
That's amazing. Um, so back to everyone's favorite topic, AI. What's your thoughts on it before I go to my question?
So look, I think AI is super exciting. When I look at the way that this allows us to learn about our customers about at pace, and bring our customers a better personalized experience. I think it's so exciting. I know it feels scary and it feels a bit Big Brother-esque, but I think you see so much from consumers that they feel bombarded by marketing communications. They get annoyed when a brand doesn't know something about them. I've already bought a dress and you're sending me performance ads, or you're telling me, oh, whoops, you've still left that in the basket and I've already made the purchase. That is frustrating. And a way that we're going to be able to improve that is through leveraging AI. Where I feel that brands, particularly startups, need to be a lot more mindful about using AI is for content generation. I think it's great as an inspiration driver, and for full transparency, we use it as something to start ideation, to spark inspiration. But it's not the solution. It's not the execution. I think there's for us, we've spoken about a lot already, that for us, something really important as a financial product is building trust. If we start using AI for our consumer communications, it negates that trust element, right? People want to feel that there's a real person behind the brand. So I think AI is super exciting for making marketing teams more agile, sparking really interesting conversations. But I think we've got to be really mindful about the way that we use it, on negatively impacting a customer's perception of a brand.
So my question will have two parts. The first part is, where do you not see AI, or like where do you not want to see AI being used?
Hmm.
as a marketing manager, like you see them like using it in content, and you say, nope, 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 nope. That's a no-go. And like how how do you think AI is maybe causing distrust with companies, and how, like, because you said Mimojo is all about building trust,
Yeah.
and you've also said that AI negates trust because it feels dry, it feels flat, it feels like I'm talking to an automated system, which it is kind of an automated system. And from like a leadership perspective, just quickly, you don't have to go deep into it. Where do you
Hmm.
not want to see AI? And let's start with this. I'll give the other question in a bit.
Yeah. So I think for me, specifically for Memojo or for any brand,
For any brand.
for any brand. I don't think there is a no-go because I think it depends on your business. So, like from my perspective, I would never want to see AI used for real life video content generation. That for me is a no-go for my brand, right? So, I don't even that, with all of the real life uh, human generation that you can do now with AI, for me and my brand, absolutely no way. But for a different product, let's say you're selling a house and you're selling a off-plan real estate vision. That's where that's perfect because you don't have a product to show and feel, but
Yeah.
you can create it with AI and you can sell the dream through a real life lens. So I think I'd be hesitant to say that there's one space that I would never want to see AI, because I think it really depends on your brand and your product, where you choose to use it and where you decide that it's not the right fit for your business.
Okay. For Mimojo in specific,
Hmm.
what does building trust like what does building trust mean? How do you, from a leadership perspective, from a thought leadership perspective, everyone wants like their customers to trust their brand.
Yeah.
And as you said, like within the first onboarding steps, you have to enter your credit card in Memojo.
Yeah.
So just how do you like, what's your gut feeling about approaching building trust?
Yeah. So look, I think what we've been doing is very much leaning into um, nuances that we know automatically build trust. So, for example, we are partnered with Visa and MasterCard. The leverage of that powerful brand association is really significant. So, we make sure that when we're looking to communicate to our customers from a above the line perspective, specifically in influencer content, is we ensure that that's in the script. So we're partnered with Visa and MasterCard. All your data is safe, and using the reassurance and affirmation of influencers is really important. It's a really great way to build authenticity and trust. And we work really closely with the influencer to make sure that that they understand our product, that it's not, we need them to be able to believe in the product as well, because it comes across on nuances like tone of voice, like you can tell when an influencer is doing something because that was just on the script, or doing it
Yeah.
because they actually understand and um, understand the product. So, for example, when we do a piece of influencer content, we have a mandate that they have to subscribe and they have to go out and make a transaction, so that they've had that real life interaction with the brand. What we could do is we could just send them a script and say, we don't need you to for the product, but we just need you to say this and record this. But that impacts the tone of voice that's used with the influencer. So I think like authenticity is something that's really important, is making sure that when we're executing anything, it's done with a like a true grounding in authenticity. You talk about thought leadership. That is something that will always be a vein of what we do. Because I think one of the challenges that we have as a brand is our technology is not very well, is not really used in the UAE. So card linked offer technology is something which is used in the US and the UK, but it's really new in the UAE market. And when we were going through our development of our go-to-market strategy in terms of what the barriers were of customers, it's people that think that people were like, this is too good to be true, so there's got to be something wrong with it. Which is why our campaign line is "You better believe it." So I think like the building trust comes down to really being clear about your tone of voice and be unwavering on that. So, you know, we talk with a sense of authority, but we're not dictatorial. So that's a really important balance for us to make. And yet leaning into the things like our Visa and MasterCard. We're also PCI compliant, which is a bit more of a challenging message to communicate to consumers because not every consumer knows what PCI compliance means. But, you know, we know in the industry it means that, you know, there's nuts and bolts around your data and information. And so trying to think about ways that we explain that in a less kind of jargon way is also something that we think about through leveraging social. So that's where kind of our organic social sits as well, to make sure that our social channels form a part of the education journey as a reference point. So when people are looking to find out more about us, you know, most people will look to your Instagram, will look to your TikTok or what have you, and how can we playfully build trust in an authentic way, which isn't silly, but is still fun and engaging.
Amazing. You've spoken about like some stuff being good to be true, and it really I mean, when I think about it, I think about like trends that I've seen in maybe in the US that have not made it to the Middle East or like the whole MENA region. And when they come, they do seem like has to be some catch. There has to be a gotcha somewhere. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting to see how businesses are keeping up with trends and making them also. So for Mimojo, what have been like some trends that you've seen happen within like your tenure, and what do you think would happen in the future for digital marketing in general terms?
Oh, that's a really big question.
You can just like give me headlines. You don't have to dive deep into it.
Trends from other regions.
And
Can
I
we come
think
back
the
to that one?
UAE, yeah, the UAE has been like leading when it comes to a lot of trends that I've seen in the Western world. Crypto, contactless. I think they were the first ones to do it. But I feel like there must be some stuff that, you know, would like affect how marketing is being done. Like AI is affecting how marketing is being done right now. But like for Mimojo in specific, do you think there will be a trend that would maybe shape your next marketing strategy? Or do you think that you have a solid plan for the next couple of like 12 months going towards 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think that look, I think because we are a new technology to the market, but not to the international community. I think like the next 12 months is really pivotal for us. You know, from what everybody else sees, we're a B2C product, but actually we've got a really strong and powerful B2B arm of the business. And for H1 of this year, we've got some really exciting new projects that we're already working on. And I think that the start of these projects is, without giving too much away, we're working with some of the biggest brands in the UAE and it's the first time that they're looking at adopting this style of technology. And I think that's a real testament to the hard work that went into the ideation of our product in terms of identifying the pain points that people feel within the rewards and loyalty space, both from a customer perspective, a consumer perspective, and from a merchant perspective, and the way that we have solutionized a frictionless experience for the consumer and an equitable experience for our merchants. So I think that, look, if I speak specifically to rewards and loyalty, I think what we are pushing the industry to be more mindful of is the value of data. And I think that, if we think about specifically in F&B and in hospitality, there is, if we look at kind of maybe smaller chains, not like big hospitality brands like Marriott and what have you, who have big data teams, data is petrifying. It's, I don't know where to start. So I'm going to craft my menu. I'm going to decide on my promotions based on my gut feel and my experience of what I know works, as opposed to looking for platforms that can bring you data insight, which you probably can't get from your day-to-day operations. And I think that's what Memojo brings. And that's our vision for the business, is really to empower any merchant that is on our platform with data insight, which is visualized, accessible, and actionable. Because I think that if you are a smaller business or a growing business, if you don't have a data analyst in your team, you revert to your gut feel, right? And I think that's the gap that Memojo will fill. Is that's okay. You don't need a data analyst, because what we're going to be doing is, because of the way that our technology works, in terms of the demographic data that we can bring you and the spending habit insight that we're able to give you, because of the way that our product works, we can give you those insights, and you can create the actions super quickly. So I think they've definitely kind of the wider scale adoption of using data insights to inform business growth is what we are looking to push, and to build the bridge of that knowledge gap that we have around the power of card-linked offer technology.
Amazing. Well, I'm gonna stray away from the business, and I'll give a reference to football, and I'm gonna ask a question. So I want you to imagine, do you watch football, like the English Premier League?
I don't, but my dad is a die-hard Liverpool fan, so I know things by association, but I wouldn't say that I follow it myself.
Okay, so the current football manager for Liverpool is Arne Slot right now. I want you to imagine that you are now Arne Slot, and you have to build an all-stars marketing team for a brand that is B2C.
Okay, yep.
How do you approach, what's your headlines on what positions you want to see filled first to achieve acquisition in the first maybe 12 months, and then how do you focus on retention? Because I think that you have a lot of thoughts about this, and you've indirectly spoke about this within this episode, but I feel like you have more to say. So I want you to imagine that your dad's favorite your dad's favorite football manager now, and you're building a Liverpool right now. So what would be your first hires and why?
Oh, okay, that's a really good question, and I'm going to take it back a step. The first step of any marketeer is to establish the 4 Ps, because that is what should guide your hiring strategy. Because depending on your product, so for example, if the brand that we're talking about is a beauty brand, then actually my first challenge is distribution. How am I building out? Is it, a B2B marketing person who can build out a really, really strong distribution strategy to make sure that my product's actually available for my customer to buy. But if we're a D2C brand, well, no, then I need to make sure that my first hire is a brand expert in creating content, and then my second hire is a performance marketing manager. So I think that there's no copy and paste, right, for marketing functions. From our perspective, we're heavier on the performance side of the business because we're an app product. And it all depends on your brands and making sure that you've established what those 4 Ps are. You've established what the commercial objectives of the business are as well. Are you an owner funded startup? What's the vision of the owner? Are you a VC backed startup? What's the 3-year plan that you need to be driving towards? And those conversations need to take place first before you establish what that ecosystem looks like internally and externally. Because I think that's another really important bit is, what do you feel like a single person is going to be able to do and bring value to your business, versus what do you need to lead into a multidisciplined agency approach where you use that headcount budget for an agency retainer, which gives you an entire different wealth of expertise and skill.
Okay. And for retention in later stages of the business, what hires would you focus on?
Yes, I think from a retention perspective, it's really important to look to invest in your growth team. Those and growth managers are a very different mindset to a marketing manager. They are people who are who actually nail that multidiscipline piece, right? That they have a really strong understanding of data, they have a good understanding of product, and then they're able to manipulate marketing to deliver on your retention objectives, and tapping into all of those different inputs that positively impact either your acquisition or your retention strategy. So I think investing in a growth team and making sure that you have a really strong lifecycle tech setup and lifestyle marketing support in terms of the skill set of manipulating that tool to make sure you're optimizing your retention.
Most of the listeners that we have on this podcast are like people in higher levels, like C-level, like CMOs and CEOs and stuff like that. If you have to give an advice for like people from these levels when it comes to approaching marketing, and you're a generalist, so you're not gonna be swayed into like just bumping, like saying performance marketing matters the best or like the most, or like brand matters the most. What would be your advice for let's say a company that is starting out now and they're building like their first couple of hires, and this company is just starting out? So would you say for the CEO to get a head of marketing first, or would there be another position that you would recommend?
What's for a CEO building their team for the first time?
Yeah.
I would say that marketing is towards the end of your hiring journey.
Wow.
Mainly because you need to decide what your product is first. Oh no, maybe I'm going to renegade on that. I think it depends on your vision. If I think about the Mimojo journey, it wasn't a marketing-led conversation. It was a use case of a frustration within the sector, which was reward and loyalty, and it was a product fix that needed to happen. So that was done by a team of product experts. So if you're talking about in terms of where to invest your budget, I think it depends on if you've got a vision and you've got no idea how to navigate it and you need some market expertise, then you would hire a marketing person to inform your insight. But if you know what your insight is and the problem that you need to fix, you're going to hire a product person first to fix it and then hire a marketing person to sell it. So yeah, I think, without wanting to kind of skirt around the question, I think it depends what your vision is, like the CEO's vision. And if it's defined, then that you need to hire people to build that product. But if you are navigating what you think that solution could be, then you need a marketing person to kind of direct you in terms of what the real gap in the market is and who that product needs to speak to be able to fill that gap.
Okay. And who sets the GTM, like the go-to-market strategy?
Head of marketing.
Okay. All right.
On the basis of consolidating the objectives from the business. But a go-to-market strategy is a marketing person who understands consumers, because ultimately our products are nothing if we don't have customers. And it's a marketing person that has to lead that knowledge and that insight of what is going to cut through. But with the support of the insight and objectives from the rest of the business.
All right. Well, I think that this has been such a great episode, Lou. Thank you so much for joining me.
No
worries. I'll ask you to stay. I've thrown some curveballs your way, and you've been more than amazing in answering them. You have I don't want to inflate your ego, but you do have great answers and a great approach to strategic marketing and not being fixated on a single marketing branch. I'm mainly involved in content, and I mostly do content only. That's why I run the podcast with Patrick and I run the company blog. But not having your vision, your scope, just fixated on one thing gives you a lot of a Swiss Army kind of feel like you can do a lot of things, and the things that you do not you do not know how to do, you either hire internally or you get external help, and it shows in the awards that you've won so far and in your journey throughout the companies that you've talked about, which is a lot of expertise. So thank you so much for joining me in the Digital Disruption podcast. We appreciate you joining us again. Of course, the first time you joined us was in the Women in the Martech in Dubai. This time you're joining us virtually. Hopefully we'll see you in in the next time, maybe in a summit or something. We'll definitely enjoy some tea. I'll ask you to stick around. For everyone else who's listening, thank you so much for listening. If you want to follow Lou, you could find her on LinkedIn. I'll leave her socials in the podcast episode. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you in the next week.
Thank you so much.